everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the hashtag Vancouver Survival Guide. I am your host, Mike Zaremba, and we are bringing this to you from Vancouver Real Studios. It's a podcast, but we are sponsored by Float House. Float House is a commercial flotation center, and the Vancouver Survival Guide is all about bringing resources to you to help you survive in this city. And not just survive, we want you to thrive. So we bring people on from the community, different businesses, organizations, leaders, anything that's really happening here, and kind of related to our themes. We try to have themes every month. One was fitness and nutrition. We've had technology. We're going to get into finances. So just things that hopefully support you in your life so that you can thrive in the city and not just survive. But today's a little bit different. I was in Float House just last week, and we're getting some photos done. And the photographer who's with me today, Eric Davis, he does some marketing work as well. He was asking some really, really good questions about floating and Float House and myself in general. I'm like, you know what? Why don't I invite you on the show and maybe flip things around a little bit, because I think that a lot of people would be really interested in the questions you're asking. So without further ado, welcome Eric to the show.
You can call me Derek.
Derek, Eric is pretty close, right?
It's Derek with an E is what I say. Usually people.
It makes complete sense. But anyways, thanks for taking up on my offer.
Yeah.
And I think, we kind of got going last week on those questions, and I'm like, man, let's turn the tables on me a little bit and ask away, because I really do think that some people will get some value out of this and see a little bit more of the depth and stories behind floating and Float House. So.
Well, I ask good questions. My mom always told me I ask good questions, and I said, why is that? And she's like, you're doing it right now. You're asking those questions. So
right. So you've always been the inquisitive young buck?
Yeah.
Cool.
Very exploratory.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I kind of have an idea where we're going, but, you've kind of had a week to prepare. So,
well, the first question I asked you, it was more of a comment, but as we were doing the photo shoot, everyone that was coming in, the models and like people coming in to float, were all like, they all seemed really nice and like peaceful. And so I was like, is that a common thing? Is everyone that comes here amazing, or is it just me, or was it because of the sunny day, or like?
It could be that. I mean, the sun is pretty medicinal for us here, right? But for the most part, yeah. The people that are attracted to floating and flotation therapy, or the practice of floating, if you will, are really interesting people. It's hard to kind of peg them into one box for sure.
But what are like some of the commonalities of like people that float?
I think like definitely openness, inquisitiveness, like yourself. People who are open to alternative healing modalities, obviously, and looking to be also a lot of people who are very like proactive in their life. So taking care of themselves before shit hits the fan, maybe. And then a lot of people going in for like creative insights. So a lot of creativity people.
Basically me.
Basically you, yeah.
Totally. Me and my friends.
And that's why we need, that's why I'm going to lock you in the tank after this, because, you're due for a float.
Sweet. And then I kind of wanted to hear some stories, just because, I'm in there photographing people in their bathing suits and stuff. And I'm like,
yeah,
there might be some interesting stories that go on here. I was hoping to hear, I was asking you for maybe to compare and contrast a couple different examples of kind of stories that you remember about Float House, of things that go on here.
Yeah, I mean, Float House, like I said, we attract a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
And we've hosted, over the last 4 years that we've been open, tens of thousands of floats. And so you can imagine that not every float's going to be kind of, by the book. And in our early goings, like at Float House, we have a pretty analog filtration system. So we actually manually control when the pumps go on and off. And we have, oftentimes we'll see people coming for a float, and there's usually one part of that couple who is like a float enthusiast. They're really excited. They've heard of it. They want to try it, and they're all on board. And usually they drag somebody else in with them just to be their partner. And so there's one lady who was brought in with her friend, and she was the joiner, the non-enthusiast basically, but on board, open to it, but didn't really have any idea what this is about. And so sometimes, well, the one time there, we forgot to turn off the pump, and so she goes into her room, she has her shower, and
well, I asked you, I was like, what do you mean by that? Just because does it pump out before and then you turn it off before people go?
No, sorry. Yeah, let me clarify. So basically what we do is we filter the water between every user.
Okay.
Right? And so we turn on the filtration system, and there's like this big jet of water that's pumping water in and sucking water out.
Refresh.
And it makes like this like whirlpool effect basically
Okay.
in there. It's quite frothy and viscous and like turbulent, right? Not the most tranquil environment. Whereas when you're normally floating, it's perfectly still. The pump isn't on, the filtration's not on, because we're looking for maximal sensory reduction, that stillness, that peacefulness. But her just not knowing the ins and outs of what this is about really, and we forgot to turn off the pump. And so she has her shower and she steps into this super turbulent body of water that's just frothing up.
Hot tub.
And basically like a hot tub, but even more stronger than that because we don't have as much water in there. And so she goes and lies in there for over 60 minutes in this like jet-driven whirlpool, and then comes on out after that. And we're like, oh, how is your flow? She's like, it's okay, but a lot of salt was getting in my eyes. And then we realized that the pump was left on her whole flow. So she's just there getting blasted by this super concentrated Epsom salt water, which as soon as it gets in your eyes, it stings. You don't want to get it in your face. Not that it harms you, but it's just very uncomfortable. So,
opening your eyes in the ocean.
Oh, but even more so, like way more intense than that. Like it stings like crazy. Again, it doesn't harm you, but it's quite potent. So, on one of our early blunders there, that happened, and but she was actually pretty cool. I mean, we comped her; she was fine about it, and But
and then she tried it again, like regular.
I don't know if she became regular, but I know she definitely came back because we gave her that free float and tried it again, and that's the thing with floating too. Like quite often, it takes a few shots at it regardless.
I've heard that. Like, can you kind of? That's a common statement. Like people try it once,
right?
It's like, oh no, like even. I forget her name, the girl in the photo shoot. She's like, come 3 times before you can even judge it.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, with floating.
What does that mean though?
Well, basically we look at it as a practice, and and even though you're lying there doing nothing, there is a skill set involved, to be honest with you. And I look at it as kind of the hard skills and the soft skills of floating. The hard skills is kind of getting used to the mechanical process of coming in and showering off, inserting the earplugs, getting physically comfortable in the surrounding, not getting salt in your eye, not having the jets blast you like we do with that one woman, and then coming out. So just getting used to that mechanical process, learning the procedures, if you will, because there's little things that you can do. Like if you get salt in your eye, that's going to kind of disrupt your float, and then. The soft skills are probably the trickier part of it, and that's learning how to work with the environment yourself.
So that's basically mental preparation?
Yeah, mental preparation, and then learning in the moment while you're in the float how to calm yourself down, how to relax, how to breathe, how to let go, and just kind of doing what you need to do as a unique individual to feel comfortable mentally and physically.
How long did it take you when you first started to get to a stage where you're like...
Well, one float for me, I mean, here's the thing. My first float was about 7 years ago, and I first heard of floating online, and I found a lady in Port Coquitlam who had a tank in her basement. And because at that time, there was no commercial float centers in Vancouver at all.
So what, are you just researching? Like, how did you discover it?
I just Googled. Google, you put anything in there and something comes back. So this lady had a home massage therapy practice in her basement in Port Coquitlam, and she also had a float tank. And actually, her husband had the float tank, and so she would let people, use the tank. So I went there and bought a 60-minute float, and had the shower and all that kind of stuff in her basement. And I remember it was like her tank was like. She had like this curtain down the tank, so all you had was like the door exposed. It was like you were kind of climbing into this endless black abyss kind of thing.
Into a lady's tank in Port Coquitlam in a basement.
Exactly. And so it was kind of bizarre. So naturally inside, and floating is a very unusual environment. I mean, that environment does not exist anywhere else on Earth, literally. And so when I was in there, for the first 50 minutes, I was relatively uncomfortable. I just didn't know how to settle myself. And this is, I'm an experienced meditator, practice yoga. I can, kind of go within in that way, but the float tank was a whole different sort of realm. And so it took me about 50 minutes, and then I finally just let go and relaxed. And the last 10 minutes, I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going and where this could lead potentially. And I came out of that float, and it was after that one float that my brother and I decided to buy our first tank and set up in North Vancouver in my condo. And so, and I just knew at that point, I knew what that environment could show me and teach me. That was kind of the leaving impression I had from my first float.
So did you buy the tank to start a business, or was it just for your personal reasons to keep doing it?
Yeah, mostly it was just at that time was to just float ourselves. Like we just wanted to float. My brother and I, same thing. He actually went and tried it twice, I think, before.
So you loved it?
Yeah, I just connected to it. And I just knew I wanted to experience this environment more. And so we bought our tank, put it in our condo in North Vancouver, and we just started hosting floats out of my apartment under the table, set up a cheap little website. Facebook was very different back then too. This is back in late 2010. And
hydro bill a little higher during that time?
A little bit time, yeah. It doubled actually. It doubled. But I mean, it wasn't that bad. It went from $40 to $80. So, but we were charging people for the float. So we ended up getting the tank paid for after about 6 or 8 months, and started learning how to host floats, how to man and take care of the float tank environment, like managing the water chemistry and all that kind of stuff.
So you the customer experience, like as soon as they enter the door type of thing?
Totally. Well,
remove the
shoes. There's so much that impacts a float. And it's your state, because the float is really just you. It's you being isolated in this environment. And so whatever kind of state you're bringing into that environment is going to have a direct impact on your experience. So by me setting you up well, making you feel prepared and secure and entrusting and empowered, and knowing okay, I got a good idea what this is about. Even though this is brand new and I've never done it before, I think I know what I have to do here, or at least to as much a degree as you can. And me being the host have a huge role to play in that. If I just kind of showed up and let you in and hey, come on in, yeah, you want to float? Sure, come on in, go in.
Totally.
It's not going to work as well. Your experience is going to be dramatically different versus if I take my time and connect with you a little bit and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I noticed that here, as soon as you walk in and remove the shoes, there's awesome, tranquil music going.
Yeah.
People are welcoming. You go sit on the couch, you get some water.
Yep.
What's that drink that you serve?
Well, we have kava kava.
Kava kava. It's
it's a natural anti-anxiety kind of elixir. It's from Polynesia.
So is that journey you discovered that authentically setting up your own thing in your place back then?
Yeah, I mean, it's just observing what people needed to learn and hear, and kind of what would help them and support them going into the float tank. And so that was kind of our incubation period. That was our little schooling period. And I mean, the whole thing, Float House has just been a gigantic schooling period for me in an awesome way. But that time was really interesting. It was kind of our test market, but also learning how to do this well and be sensitive to it, and try to facilitate really positive experiences.
So on a situation, I'm just imagining this scenario right now. The tank is in the apartment.
Yep.
North Vancouver.
Yep.
Someone comes in, a friend or to float. You put them in, and then you just watch a movie, or
basically, yeah. So what I did was I had a 1-bedroom, and I basically sacrificed my bedroom, and that became the float room, because that was connected to, it had 2 doors, one to the living area and then one to the bathroom. And the bathroom also had 2 doors. So it was a way to keep the float environment private, the float room connected to the shower, so that way they could have that space within my condo. And, kind of like how we have it set up here. You have a private room with a private shower, because it is a private, personal experience. And so I sacrificed my bedroom, moved my bed into the living room, made a studio place out of that. And so they would come in. I think some people were kind of taken back that it was a personal residence, even though I did clearly state that on the website. It was a private studio facility or residence or something like that, and
Something classy.
yeah, totally. I worded it well,
Yeah.
but people don't read half the stuff that's there anyways. People are
Yeah.
kind of selective, so I basically would welcome them in, take them up, chit chat a little bit, and just make them feel as comfortable as I could. Gave them their little pre-float briefing and sent them on the way. And then I'd be in the other room. I had like a little desk at my workstation, and I would just kind of hang out there. And when their time was up, 60, 90 minutes, 2 hours, I'd go. And at that time, we didn't have any audio wake up, so I'd just go and gently knock on the tank. And they would come on out, have their shower, and then sometimes we would chat, or sometimes I'd be like, I got somebody else coming in, I gotta let you go.
Yeah.
And I think on my busiest day, I hosted 10 1-hour floats in one day out of my condo. So that's when we kind of like clued in, like, okay, there's something here, and I think people are connecting with what this is, and let's do this.
And also, you wanted your bedroom back as well.
Yeah. At that time, I was with a different partner, and yeah, that didn't work out. She wasn't pretty happy with the whole scenario of me hosting floats and turning our residence into a bedroom. So
that's funny.
It happens, But that's how it kind of all got started, and it was a pretty cool period. Actually, I'll share a story from that time.
Is it the thread story?
The thread story, yeah, because it was during that time. So when we first got the tank.
So just so everyone knows,
Sure.
this is kind of what threw me for a loop when you first told me this story. I was like, okay, now I'm into it. I got to see what's going on.
Cool. Well,
So-
I hope I can translate that off.
I hope you can do it again.
We'll try. But I mean, this was like an experience that I had that was definitely like perspective shifting. So I mean, there's one thing that floating can do. It can shift your perspective.
Okay, before you start, like, what do you mean by that?
Well,
And why is that necessary?
I think being open to the unknown, I think if we can say that we know everything, well, as a species, as a civilization, or as an individual, I think we're fooling ourselves. I think we don't know everything. And I think being open to the unknown, whatever level that may be, is very valuable. I think it's very useful. I think it can serve you very well in your personal life and your professional life. And so I think being open is really powerful and special.
When I think about hearing that and like put myself in the shoes of like young professionals around this area, or the working people in this area in Vancouver, it's almost safer not to think about that. It's like ignorance is bliss in a way. Just I'm pretty busy. I want to do my fun time, and I got to kill at my job.
Right.
Basically.
Well, I mean, I look at being open as being able to have more fun and actually be better able to kill it at your job. I think the more you can personally develop in all levels of your being can support you in all areas of your life, personal relationships, personal internal relationship with yourself, and then in your relationship with people at work, your creativity, your productivity, your self-care. All these things are definitely interrelated. And so I see that by being open and aware of the unknown is, in my perspective of reality, is that change is the only constant. And we know this, that at the very fundamental levels of atomic chemistry is that everything is moving and vibrating and exchanging, and even something that looks really static is actually always moving and vibrating, and that we live in this ocean of motion, this vibrational state. And so even if you wanted to hang on to something, you can't. It's impossible. You have to let go. You can't hold on to anything. And that seems to be like a universal law of nature and reality. And so by being open to the unknown, because the fact that change is the only constant in my paradigm, then being open to that change, the unknown, like same thing.
People don't really like change, though.
I think, sure. I mean, but I think that's an opportunity for growth. Okay, if you don't like change, well, the nature of reality is change. So if you don't like change, then you're resisting the nature of reality, in my opinion. So I think by being in more congruency with that, you're going to have a more fulfilling, creative, impactful, almost tranquil life, an easier life, and going with the flow, I think, is actually a really good overused term.
So can I tell you what that, listening to your words, kind of means to me?
Sure.
So I got, like I said, I have my fun, happy, maybe my family life. I got 2 kids, I like to play Frisbee golf. That's my, fun time. And then I have this job that I want to do awesome at. Mm-hmm. And so I have this perspective of those kind of 2 main things. But you're saying to switch that perspective, it's almost like moving to the side and looking at those 2 things differently would allow me to have a bigger view of both of those main things in my life.
Yeah.
To expand both.
And I think further understanding any element of your life from different angles will only be more enriching.
So I would essentially be better at Frisbee golf.
Absolutely. You'll be better at everything.
Or I'd enjoy it more.
Absolutely. Whether it's more enjoyment, whether it's more accurate, maybe if you had maybe if I tweak how I throw with my wrist here a little bit, I'll have a bit more torque on that, and I can, curve it in, whatever you got to do. But yeah, having more perspective, more information coming into you. And you can, by not having a shifting in perspective, you're going to automatically limit yourself. So I think by taking other people's perspectives in or choosing to shift your own, and you don't have to take it in without testing it first. I think you should have a level of skepticism and critical thinking. I think that's very valuable for humans as a species, to get by in life. Otherwise, you're just kind of, going on the whim and not really being aware.
Totally. You're placing intention on every area of your life when you kind of take it seriously and invest time into that.
And it doesn't mean that you become like this monk of sorts, but I think it can just become, I do believe that greater awareness to any element of life can just bring you a greater life experience. You are experiencing more of life.
Well, it's obvious you had that impact after your first time of floating.
Yeah.
And now
Float House is expanded to 6 or 7 locations and, dozens of tanks and, hosting tens of thousands of floats and introducing this to a population of people who didn't have exposure to this and didn't have access to these facilities. And plus, the whole industry's kind of spawned now. So it's been an amazing, thing just because of, well, I wouldn't say just because of our experience, but definitely a huge component of Float House and floating in Vancouver has happened because of the work that my brother and I did.
Yeah, totally. And I see it growing in just with Steph Curry, basketball player, and Joe Rogan talking about it.
Totally. The mainstream exposure that it's gotten, especially different athletes, different celebrities, they're just great platforms to expose this, practice, this experience, this therapy to a lot of other people. And, it has some amazing applications. It can really do some amazing things for people with different mental health issues, chronic pain issues, or that whole personal development side. So there's a lot that can be extracted from that, but ultimately it's what are you bringing to it? What do you want to get out of this experience? What is your intention?
Yeah.
And whether you go in with a specific intention and get what you want, you might not get what you want, but you'll get what you need, and it's being open to maybe not getting what you want, but getting something just as valuable because you're oh, I didn't realize that about my behavior or about my thought processes or about this thing that happened at home 2 weeks ago, how now I can have some space and time to look at it a little differently and to be wow, I was kind of a little irritable there and I wasn't in a really good space. And I said something that really triggered or hurt my partner, or, you can take that reflection time in a very powerful way by going to the float tank.
And you had that with the thread story that I interrupted.
Right. No. So basically, when you have an experience that is kind of unexplainable, then, that you kind of have to incorporate that into your reality somehow. So let me tell you this story.
So this is back in your place in North Van.
Yeah, this is back in my place. So we've got the tank. This is late 2010. I started floating every other day pretty much.
How old were you? Like, or
I was, well...
Here's a better question. How long was your hair at this point?
Oh, I was short-haired.
Short-haired?
I was heavy into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time. So I was grappling. So you can't have long hair with grappling. I mean, you can, but man, you're going to get yanked. And so, I was really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I had short, athletic hair. Now I'm kind of in a medium stage.
It looks good.
But, and then I started growing my hair once I got into floating, which I don't know why. It just happened. So short hair, Mike, and floating every other day for 6 weeks. Like, it was super intensive floating practice I went into just because I just loved it. I was so into it. But around maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, I kind of hit like this plateau, and I wasn't really going deeper with my practice. I wasn't connecting how I was. And so I had a series of floats that I wasn't really getting much out of. So I was kind of like frustrated almost. And during my pre-float shower of one day, it was in the evening, and I was showering off, and I really just got open, and I verbalized this. I said this out loud to myself. I'm like, show me something. Teach me something new. Show me something new. I just kind of threw that out there.
And that's to God, that's to the universe, that's to...
all of the above. You name it, higher power, higher self, eternity.
Whoever's listening. Yeah. And so I just put that out there, and went into the tank and closed the hatch and just laid down and started breathing, going into it. And I just kept letting go more. And my legs disappeared, and it felt like my torso disappeared, and then my head was disappearing, my arms were disappearing, and all that was left. You don't feel anything in there?
Yeah, my personal experience, my subjective experience was that I was disappearing. Because that's what kind of happens in the float tank. The water is heated to the same temperature as the surface of your skin. So when you get really still in there and it matches up to your skin temperature, it's skin receptor neutral. So that boundary between your skin, your body, and the water can get dissolved. It gets muddled, and it's hard to detect. So you get this experience can happen, and it will happen for people that float enough and kind of sink into it. It can happen on the first one, who knows.
So you don't feel anything, you don't see anything,
right?
You don't hear anything.
You don't hear anything external to you.
Yeah.
So all you hear usually is your heartbeat and your breath. But even that, as you kind of go deeper into a meditative state, that can even kind of start to fade away. You just don't even cue in on it, right? And so I was having this experience of my body basically dissolving, and all that I could feel left was like this little thread at the center of my chest, right up my heart. And I felt like vibrationally I was in a completely different space. And if I was able to snip that thread and cut it and let go completely, well, I don't know where I would have gone. And I felt like I would have just disappeared. And a part of me was like really anxious and a little nervous, and my heart was pounding. And then a part of me was really excited, and I wanted to go. And ultimately I wasn't able to cut that thread that time. But it, it's just so crazy how when I put that out there, when I came in with that pretty strong fortitude of teach me something, and I felt it, I really brought that intention.
That's kind of a result of what you were talking about before, when you're like, you have to bring the game.
Absolutely.
That you want to play.
And I think you can apply that to anything in life, not just floating. Floating is just a great way to really distill it down to you and your experience and being real with yourself in that environment. So I came out of that float and I kind of journaled it down, and I just, I'm like, what is that? What was that experience? What does that mean to me? And I had to kind of bring that into my reality, because I had that experience. That's what it felt like. Whether that's really what was happening or not didn't really matter, because I had the experience of this is what's happening.
So now do you try to recreate that moment, or do you kind of go for other experiences?
Sometimes. I used to, that's something that you can kind of get into a little trap to, by trying to make something happen, by trying to get somewhere, to do something in the float tank. By that trying element is actually the exact opposite way of how you even get there.
Yeah.
So you gotta not try, and you have to really let go. And again, that comes back to that kind of notion of change. You know, when you're trying or forcing or holding on, you are resisting the natural flow. And so by letting go and letting it take you and saying, well, how deep can I go? How much can I relax into my personal state of being and presence and go into that?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a limit to it.
So I'm putting myself in the shoes of people that are walking past these windows right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was them, I would say, okay, floating, I've heard about it. Heard good things, you know. That guy has great hair. So he must.
Lisa's Chop Shop, shout out.
It must work for that guy. What's in it for me? Like, just straight up, what do I get out of it? Like, if they said that to you, kind of simply, what's your response?
Well, I guarantee profound relaxation, experienced consciously. So you get to go into an environment where you are completely supported by water. Every square millimeter of your surface area is contoured to and supported. So you can completely relax, and all the stability muscles that posturally hold you up all the time against the forces of gravity can let go. All your joints will decompress. And ultimately your central nervous system, which is the governing system of our whole body, will go into a profound state of deep relaxation that you get to consciously go into, which is different than sleeping. Sleeping, we're not conscious. And also you have pressure points of the bed.
Okay.
So you get to go into that state consciously, and at the very least, kind of like rebooting your computer, clearing all the apps on your phone, swiping them all.
Which is a good feeling.
It's a great feeling.
I love holding it down, pressing X, getting rid of the red notifications.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm this guy. I'm the same guy. I work down the street here in Gastown. I work for an app company, basically. So when would be a good time to try it? Would it be like before a big meeting, say with a client, or on the weekend, or...
You know, this is part of that learning curve that I was talking about, and it's exploring these different variables of what time of the day. So personally, I love floating at the end, most often at the end of my day, 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. in that range, depending on the day.
Before dinner.
Before dinner. And this is just a great way to kind of purge that day, especially before the weekend. You know, it's like you get to go purge that week of stress before your weekend even begins. You know, so you come out of that on your Friday, boom, and like you've purged all that tension that naturally accumulates in our central nervous system. Our bodies retain this stuff, whether we believe it or not.
Just last week, personally, just to jump in there, like, I had a kind of a busy, annoying, stressful, a little bit Friday, and that kind of carried on for the rest of my night. And Saturday morning, I checked my email, and it continued. And
I mean, everyone experiences when you go away on a holiday, it takes you like a few days to decompress. Yeah. Well, what's happening there? When you decompress on a holiday, you're basically out of your normal routines, right? So like when we're in our normal routines, we're very automatized, we're automated, we're on this autopilot, and we do a lot of the same things. We're creatures of habit. When you break that and you go into holiday mode, because you're in a different environment, different smells, different foods, different culture, whatever, everything's different, you start to let go and relax, and it takes a couple days. Well, when you're in a float tank, think about it as the same way, but just like hyper concentrated. So not only we're taking everything away. All external reality to the maximal degree is gone. So it's this potent, efficient way of rebooting that biocomputer and resetting it all. So you can do that in 60 to 90 minutes, especially once you kind of get really, again, into that practice of it, and you know what works for you, the time of the day, what breath meditation works for you. Do you like some audio before your float? Do you want some kava kava, the natural pre-relaxation elixir that we have here? You know, do what you do what works best for you, and give yourself what you need. And being compassionate with yourself, with whatever you need on that day to make yourself relax and let go, that level of awareness for your self-care, I believe, is very advanced and evolved. A lot of people are very into actively releasing their stress, which is actually kind of ironic because exercise is a stressor. And I believe there's a place for that for sure. You want to keep your body healthy and blood tissues.
You're talking about going for a run after work.
Whatever it is, running. But I do believe there's a value both mentally and physically for a passive form of stress management, for a passive relaxation. And this is something that's not really super common in traditional Western culture in North America. Mindfulness meditation is definitely on the rise, but most people who are aware of meditation don't do it. It has a very high drop-off rate and is a practice. So the float tank is an amazing environment to encourage and support meditation practice, to introduce you to mindfulness and meditation, and also to, again, get all those physical kind of benefits as well. So it's you got to kind of figure it out. But end of the week is amazing. I personally love floating at 8 a.m. On my weekends. So I'll wake up before I turn my brain on. I don't go on the phone and check my emails or social.
Yeah.
I'll just have an apple or a quick smoothie.
Intentional.
Come on in and go back into that dream state. And I find those are consistently my deepest floats. I get calm right away because the sleep has already kind of purged some of that tension that we accumulate. And then when you come back and go into the float space, I love going in there for that deep meditation and having that deeper experience of a thread disappearing into the universe, whatever I was, right? And then the rest of my day, I go and have my breakfast after that. And I'm just kind of literally floating through my day. And you're kind of impervious to things that would normally be triggering or irritable to you. You're kind of like, you can just see it for what it is and not have this reaction to it. Because if you're in that kind of tense stress mode, you're more likely to be triggered, irritable, and to react.
So to go back to that thread story,
yeah.
Do you think, I don't know if this question is fair or not, but do you think you ever cut that thread? Do you think is it a challenge, or is it that was just a single experience and it was what it was?
I mean, I can't say I've had the exact duplication of that experience ever again, but I've had experiences where I felt there was no thread and I was just completely free and let go, and there was no hanging on. There's no trying to control this experience. Just like, take me, let me let go and just go with that universal flow that we know is really there, and the only constant is change.
So that brings me to my kind of last question that you want me to ask you, because you brought me here to ask.
And thank you for that. This has been great.
That's what I do. I ask good questions. You want other people to have that feeling that you just described, basically. And so that kind of transitions to this Vancouver City Survival Guide. Can you tell me what that is, what it means to you, and kind of why Float House is the best avenue to kind of help or serve the community?
I think that as human beings, we learn innately through repetition and patterning and habitualization. And that could be very supportive in many elements of our life, but I believe it can also be hindering and detrimental and building up and holding us back in different ways, potentially by not having a different perspective on something because we're always kind of doing something very similarly, or not letting ourselves kind of relax to a degree that we can. And I think that by going into the float environment is just an amazingly efficient way to disconnect from all this external stuff that we are chronically, when we are awake, we're always in this external world and externally orientated and always being pulled out of ourselves. And by taking all that away for a little bit of time, automatically redirects our awareness internally. And I feel that this sort of internal exploration is very cathartic. It's very supportive of a personal development practice and just learning more about yourself. I often say it's like going on an intimate date with yourself. Like, when you go on a date and
that'd be nice.
Third, fourth date where you really connect, like you fucking take down a wall and you put it, you tell them something real. And you tell them something a little more vulnerable about who you really are. Because we all have our stuff. We all have something that happened to us in the past or something we've done.
Is that what you want for this community of like-minded companies? And are you like a rally cry behind getting people to feel that?
Yeah, I think ultimately getting people to go within and to see what's up on the inside and to really connect with that and reconnect with that, and to foster that relationship on the inside. And because that direct primary experience, that subjective experience of you, is beautiful. And I don't know if enough people connect with their own inner beauty and like what that really feels like. And I feel like floating can provide that for people.
It's scary. Like, it's in a good way. Like, it's okay, I'm gonna go do something, that isn't easy.
I mean, it is and it isn't. It's funny. Like, it's because I'm describing this very beautiful experience, but yeah, why do we have this fear around it? Or why do some people have this fear around it? And I've had it too. Like, my first float, I was like uneasy for 50 minutes. But ultimately, the medicine of the environment will have its reaction on your physiology, and you'll get a taste of where it can go and take you. And then you realize there was nothing to be afraid of. And it was a complete mental construct that was limiting us from a life experience that we didn't know we could have, or we didn't know we could do it in that way. And I think we are beings of potential, and we are limitless in different ways. And I think exploring that potential is going to be the evolution of our species as a civilization, and as a community.
That's kind of my question to you about the community. What you're bringing people in here to kind of share their tips or what they offer to Vancouver. Can you, I guess, just share some of those tips maybe that stood out? It's like some of the people that have been coming in here, kind of joining with Float House, and then can you provide your little tip for this guide?
I mean, I love the tips of people who have come on the Survival Guide so far, just about having a balance in their life of, like, going after their dreams and goals, and accomplishing what they need to do and they feel they want to do in this world, professionally or relationally or whatever that is. But then also really enjoying life as well, and just having fun, like going back to that childhood funness, and just for something that doesn't have maybe an end goal in mind. Like, I think this term of high productivity, being hyper productive, and like, if we're not being productive, we're wasting time. I think we can waste time. I think we can have some fun and lighten up, and I think there's a neat balance that can be done there.
Is that kind of the common thread that from these kind of interviews and from these knowledge that's been shared? Absolutely.
I think some of them, all of them, and these have been, different, whether successful companies or entrepreneurs or successful people.
Like who?
We had the founder of Spud, that produce urban delivery company, and we've had a relationships woman from Unbounce, which is a digital platform for landing pages. We've had Di and Christy Manuel, who are kind of like doing their own thing in terms of an online community and fitness and nutrition and family wellness, a very holistic approach to what they're doing there. When Di came from like a business background of like Fitness World, and now he's fitness equipment sales or whatever. Now he's, and yeah, they all seem to have this ability to have like a good balance and a good perspective on what's important in their lives, and they decide for themselves what's important, and I like that element of it. I like being able to look at something and like maybe you see a commercial for it or something like that, and like, okay, this is what they're portraying to me, but do I really believe in that? Do I really connect with that? Is that really going to support me or fulfill me? And these people seem to be able to take that decision-making element into their own hands and live life more on their terms for what they want. And I really admire that about them.
Well, I think it's cool that, I guess, these like-minded people are coming together, and you're not trying to sell something. It's more like they're trying to just make life better together for people.
Totally.
Which is, awesome.
Yeah. And, I think for my survival tips for Vancouver,
are you going to give us one here?
I mean, one for sure is get out into nature. get out there and connect with the natural environment.
So give me a specific example of
Lynn Headwaters, North Vancouver. Lynn Headwaters,
where's
Regional
that?
Park. So basically, you go up Mountain Highway, go over the Second Narrows Bridge, go up get off on the number 1, get off at Mountain Highway, and go up, and then follow
just Google Map it.
Google Map. You're right. There you go. Lynn Headwaters is beautiful, big river. The water is super crystal clear and fresh and roaring down there. The trees are gigantic, and just you go for
tell me what you do.
I'll go. I'll walk. Depending on how much time I have, sometimes I'll walk for 6 hours. Sometimes it'll be like maybe 2 hours. But I'll go and I'll either go by the river, or there's some big boulders up, and I'll go find them, and I'll just go and chill out them. And then,
like a meditation spot.
I'll do a meditation what I'll do is I use Peruvian jungle tobacco. It's called mapacho, and it's a very calming plant medicine. And traditional use of tobacco with cigarettes in the West is a completely unhealthy relationship. So I'll go and I'll smoke mapacho.
I'm just imagining you, kind of your hair, a little bit of sweat from a 6-hour walk, sitting on a rock, shirt off, probably smoking this thing and having.
Yeah, and it's not
basically
like,
on a different.
It's not like it's a joint. It's not this big psychoactive trip. It's real, just tobacco. And I don't inhale it. You hold it and just connect with the essence of it. And it's called a shakaruna. And shakaruna means a bridge tool, or a bridge plant, meaning you can use it to connect like a bridge from one side to the other of whatever your intention is. So I'll go and I'll connect with the nature that I'm in. I'll connect with my family. I'll connect with my goals and my dreams. I'll connect with the present moment, and I'll connect with myself. And I'll use this as my facilitating tool. Like, humans have an amazing ability to derive powerful experiences out of ritual and intention. And I believe that is hardwired in us. And we have completely lost significance in our rituals in Western culture, in my opinion. And so reintroducing meaningful, personally defined and created rituals of whatever that is really powerful stuff. And that's what I do when I go up there, and I love it. It feels great. And then I'll come for a float.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to end this thing, are you going to ask me my tip, or is it?
Yeah, I can do that.
Does it matter?
That's kind of the nature of the travel guide. So, yeah, what do you do, Eric, for surviving and thriving in Vancouver?
Well, I'm gonna be real here. It's not going to be an impressive tip, but one of the kind of most relaxing kind of free time things that I can do, or that I've done in the past, is basically go to Horseshoe Bay, and get kind of away from that busy street down there, and kind of go down to the left away, whether it's on a dock or on the grass, whatever. And that's where the ferries come in. And it's just something about something about how slow they come in, and the mountains and the oceans there. And
interesting.
It's a good spot to it's close to floating,
right.
For just kind of stopping. Okay, everything's slowing down. So we don't see these fast cars. We see these big ships come in.
Right. So it's a different pace.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's interesting.
I guess that's what it is. It's a different pace. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And your tip, was directly centered on how can we relax? How can we pause and change the tempo?
I guess it's changed. I guess giving myself a new perspective just to think about things, think about ideas.
Give you space.
Yeah.
We live in a very up-tempo environment, I believe. Like, the connectivity is we're more connected than ever, and the data information we take in is more than ever. And so I think it's so important, and this is a super common theme of this travel guide, is people finding ways to take space in their own meaningful, personal way. And that is a definite red thread and common pattern between this travel guide, is people how do you disconnect and unplug, and whatever the way they do that. That's super common.
So maybe sometime we could do that together.
I would love to. I think looking at those ferries millimeter their way into the harbor, just it's okay to be slow.
Yeah.
Breathe it in.
So you're welcome.
Thank you.
I'll pick you up for that.
Okay.
Get some ice cream.
Ice cream, definitely. Yeah. All right, man. Well, Eric, I want to really thank you for taking up my offer and coming in and asking these questions. And I hope people got something out of this and a little more insight of what we do here at Float House.
Totally. I hope I was just trying to take the angle of just being the average type of person, not knowing too much about it.
Cool.
And because I think there's really awesome things that you said that people need to hear about, need to know about, need to try it. So
cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And to everyone who made it this far, thank you. We'll look forward to connecting with you one way, shape, or form in the future. And until next time, take it easy.